After the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl, there was a talking point that was brought up by Jordan Reed on how defensive tackles of ESPN should be more of a premium position. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think that the right defensive tackle on a team that is preparing to go on a run in the playoffs could be a perfect fit. It could be the perfect scenario, that missing piece. It's like adding a running back to an offense that needs a little bit of explosiveness. If we look at the Seahawks this past year, Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy were phenomenal, and they produced a ton of pressures in the interior during their playoff run. So with that in mind, we're going to pair a defensive tackle prospect with a team that is on the cusp of maybe getting to the Super Bowl in 2026. You start us off here. What defensive tackle would be a perfect fit for a team that wants to get to the Super Bowl next year?
Yeah, I mean, I would even say one more, Joe, just one more example before I get to it, is I think that the Philadelphia Eagles 2 years ago with what Jalen Carter was able to bring to them, like that validates recently in terms of like what has kind of put teams over the top. I think for me, the Los Angeles Chargers are a very interesting team going into next season because on paper, they have a lot of things that you like. I mean, they had a lot of things that you like this season too, and they kind of laid an egg again in the playoffs, but you have a quarterback that has high upside in Justin Herbert. You have Jim Harbaugh, who's going now into year 3 of building a program, and we know that he's a program builder. I think that they are a couple impact players on both sides of the football away from really getting over the top, and I think defensive tackles is one of the main needs outside of interior offensive line that I think that this team needs to tackle this offseason. Just talking last couple mock drafts, at least at one of them, I have given them Caleb Banks from Florida as a guy that I think makes a lot of sense because there is going to be an interesting conversation point. I don't know where you land on Caleb Banks in this bucket of what is Caleb Banks' best fit from an alignment perspective on the NFL level. I think that from a organically, you'll look at him and say he's 6'6", 335 pounds. Sounds like a nose tackle to me. But then when you watch him play, he's much more of a explosive, get off the line, split a gap type of player. Now, he can work at the point of attack, but what makes him special is how he moves for his size. So being able to give a team like the Chargers that movement-based defensive tackle who can play a couple different spots, could play some zero at times, some shade, some 3, some 4-4-eye. If you want to be a little bit interesting with him, maybe some 2-2-eye. Like, he can do a lot of different things from an alignment perspective, and I really think that he could take that defense from a good unit to maybe a really good unit going into 2026. I'm pretty bullish on Caleb Banks' potential fit with Jim Harbaugh and the boys.
Yeah, no, I love the premise, and does he take over the role that Jamari Caldwell had? And we both really like Caldwell as a nose, but there's a lot more creativity with Caleb Banks that you can do, and I think that you're spot on here. I don't want anyone to see Caleb Banks and think 6'6", 330-pound defensive tackle, oh, he's just going to be a space eater in the middle. There's a lot more to that. There's a reason why we keep comping him to Chris Jones, because Chris Jones has the frame of just your typical nose, but he generates sack production. He is somebody who can, as you talked about, split gaps because he's so quick and he's so flexible and he's so mobile. I think that this is a really, really good one because as much as the Chargers do need to work through some of their offensive issues, you've got a new OC coming in, a creative OC with Mike McDaniel, and you've also got your health coming back for your offensive line. So all that stuff should be resolved. You had a great defense this past year. You lose your defensive coordinator because he's a brilliant up-and-coming mind. Mm-hmm. What better way to hit the ground running without that coordinator than to bring in a rare prospect who might get overlooked because of his injury history? We already talked about that this week. So taking Banks and not maybe being as much of a desperation of needing him to have an immediate impact as you're trying to figure out what his full long-term scope of what he can do in the NFL with the foot injury, I think that this is a no-brainer. This is one of these picks. If he's on the board, you need to rush to the podium and go grab him.
Well, I think adding versatility to this team is going to be big for Chris O'Leary, who's the new defensive coordinator, was the former Notre Dame safety coach, actually, who was a assistant under Coach Harbaugh in 2024 before going to Western Michigan this past year. So giving a young defensive coordinator as many options and possibilities as possible, I think is huge, just from a helping him ease into that job perspective. But the other big thing, Joe, is that, and I feel like we've been talking about this the last couple years under Harbaugh, when Jim Harbaugh finally got the Michigan team over the top, what did they major in? They majored in that defensive line kicked ass. Like Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, having that interior defensive line a potent unit where you were able to dictate defensively what you wanted to do, whether it was going from Mike McDonald to Jesse Minter. Like, it didn't matter because you were able to utilize that interior defensive line at such a high level. They don't have that right now. I like Jamari Caldwell. I think Jamari Caldwell is a good nose in the NFL level, so I like him. But you don't have a guy that can really just change the line of scrimmage in your favor consistently and create negatives. You don't have that guy right now. Caleb Banks could be that difference maker for what Jim Harbaugh has wanted to do. Historically, even going back to his days in San Francisco, like what does he like to do on the defensive line? A guy like a Caleb Banks I think could fit in great.